Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Exactly.
We had a little bit of a, not really mishap.
Really?
He's worried enough about it.
I was
Give
like,
him a
you
break,
talk
you
to me, so
guys.
I'm concerned. So
He's not sleeping nights because of this, so just,
the truck that I talked to you guys about last time, 18.
Right.
Truck, they were going over there for some work, and then it ended up blowing the turbo or damaging the turbo. Gary pulled the transfer case out of it. When he pulled it out, a bunch of teeth fell out. So, not really a good thing. He did some research, and it's an old transfer case. I guess I'm not using it anymore, not using it anymore. So, he told Southwest Truck, it's over $1,000, we need to know. He called me and said, hey, got back with me, and the price was $1,556.4. I said, okay, well, I'll go. Well, the work had already been done. So, I went and asked Jerry why. He said that with the transfer case being so old, they couldn't just buy the parts. They had to track all the parts down and kind of piece it together. And so it was so hard to try and give a quote on it. They did look at one that was already rebuilt, and it was like $2,800. So he said, we actually came out pretty good. I don't know if you guys want copies of.
So they rebuilt it for the 1,500.
Yeah.
They quit making them 10 years ago, quit making parts 5 years ago for them, and so it was a piece here to rebuild it.
They did it for that. I did.
So I just wanted you guys to be aware of it because I know it's over $1,000.
And it actually worked. It doesn't ground.
Does it?
I hear clank, clank, clank. I had to drive it back.
Shattered now.
So what Gary did was he actually paid for it. We, just to let you guys know, we did a little bit of an operational policy change to where we're using the tax channels now. Right off the bat, dispatch will actually assign the tax channels. And if you guys see some invoices coming across for books, Fire 1 class is slated to start November 8th, so we're buying books in preparation for that. So you guys remember that, because the books are pricey, it's like $82. So that's all I really had.
Well, that was painless, wasn't
It
it?
was a
now
lot
he
better.
can sleep now.
Now you sleep.
I'm starting to worry.
Right now we have to find something else to mess with you.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes.
It was, I believe it was brought up one time about the shredded company that we have, and we actually did checking with it. Since Shredded doesn't do our documents on site, most of the places are shredding on site their own shredders and doing it that way. There's only one company, Underground Bolts and Storage, will do shredding on site, but you have to be in Reno County to get it. Barton County shredding on site, about everybody in Pratt County. Edward County shreds on site. Document Resources in Pawnee County, but they don't shred on site, they're out of Hayes. And
So you just buy a shredder.
well, we bought these little ones. They just,
The waste paper baskets.
yeah, they
That don't work.
just don't hold up. We've actually looked at big ones where we have price of ones that will shred like 30 pages at a time instead of like the 2 or 3. But they're pricey. $2,315 for one. It's a 38-gallon bin capacity, cross-cut, but it does 30 sheets and through HSM. And I believe this exact same HSM, but it's through OPI. But OPI jacks it up by about $1,000.
Oh.
They want $34.60, so we can order direct from the company. We can get it, 34 and 23. It's over $1,000. But we're kind of mandated. We don't know how else to do it because to get rid of them, we have to have it shredded, and we have to be witness and present when it's being done.
So all the courthouse would use it? No, just
We still use shredder.
They can still use shred it.
Ours don't have to be shredded on site, like their stuff.
But we did discuss something about maybe the health departments, the confidentiality in the EMS building and things. It would be something, at nighttime, dispatchers aren't really busy. They could sit there and shred documents. So, you know, just 30 times, just set them up there and just let it feed itself as it goes. But it can maybe, if you wanted to, may possibly do away with theirs, they could just collect it and bring it daily, whatever they have, and it'd be shredded that way. Or if they don't have that many papers, you wouldn't think. They just come in and say,
Shut up.
here, and just do them right there. That way they know their own are shredded. They can verify that they're shredded.
What do you mean yours have to be lit?
We can't. Most of it's confidentiality stuff, and then it has to be able to be signed off and verified that it was shredded in our presence time. So anybody from our office can do it. They probably have to just be able to sign off on it and say if they were shredded that way. And we thought we were going to be able to do it with shredded themselves, but we thought they were doing it on site. We just go up there and watch them put that bundle of paper in and the machine start, and that would be good. But the man told us, oh, we can shred on site.
Yeah, they used to.
They used to, but the new company thought it made it good.
So then what do you do after they're shredded? Do they have to be?
They're cross-cut. They can just be thrown in the trash after that. But we have boxes and boxes of old documents that still have to be.
In that whole trailer out there.
Some of the trailers got some of it, yeah, because in the past we were told, oh, we have to keep it forever. We found out, no, you don't have to keep it forever. Some stuff, 10 years, some stuff is 5 years, but when you have a traffic accident that's 20 years old, that's, yeah, the vehicle's been crushed and gone. People need boxes and boxes and things like that out there.
So we need to bring
I
that.
guess we don't have a choice, huh?
Well, we can still keep on doing the little ones and try to do it, but they burn up all the time.
Who is that from?
HSM.
HSM.
I didn't make a whole bunch of them,
That should
but
be
it's the
the
same
same.
thing, basically, you get the OPI, but it's door drip, it's $1,000 for us.
I move that we purchase a shredder from HSM for $23.15.
Second that.
And then secondly, we purchased that shredder from HSM for $2,315. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Maybe a copy of that.
Yeah.
Copies of this and everything.
Good. Make a motion to approve the minutes of October 5th.
Second.
Motion is made to adopt the minutes of October 5th. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carried.
Okay, Sunflower Diversified needs their grant letter for the KDOT, transportation grant that was applied for.
Make a motion to approve the Sunflower Diversified Services KDOT grant application.
Second.
Motion has been made. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
And Jamie Getty cannot serve on the,
10th?
she works for Adams Brown very well,
Oh,
and they're the
very good.
auditors for the center.
Oh, wow.
So she was very disappointed when she got told. Well, she had talked to Cam Holman, and he thought there wouldn't be a problem, but
There is.
higher up the chain thought so. So, just to tell you that. Steve Jones brought in a right-of-way. You want to kind of explain that?
Yeah, they're wanting to run electricity across the road, but the power line's on the county side. They got an anchor wire, a guide wire to run across.
Because they're going to tear out that home site thing there at 1521.
And I think they're making a pivot electric, I think, is what they're doing.
So, since we're the landowners that the
Yeah.
anchor will go on, you guys need to sign that, approve that.
So the anchor would be in the.
On our side,
On
the
Sandy
second
Land
end.
side.
It only sticks out 15 feet.
You know, anything farmland.
Yeah.
Well, they got plenty on that corner. They're a bunch of old wells and weather station. I hadn't heard nothing on the weather station. I thought they were gonna move that.
It's still out there, isn't it?
Yeah.
I haven't heard anything.
The guy called me about it. Remember when he?
Yeah.
He said he
He's
was
never
gonna
done
put it-
anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, he tried to move it down there by your shed.
Oh.
That's where he wanted to move it, and I've never heard anything back from him.
Yeah.
Kinda like, well, oh, that's the one he wanted to.
He wanted us to raise some private.
Yeah, he
funds
wanted
for
to raise the money. I said, you raise the money, I'll let you put it down there. But
Yeah.
I said, I'm not gonna take the time to raise the money for that.
it. So we got a motion this or?
Yep.
That's right, yeah, he wanted me to, I said, I'm not gonna be in charge of that.
I thought Glenn was gonna
That's what I
raise
thought.
some money.
They were gonna go north of town,
On
something.
Kurt's.
Kurt.
Yeah.
Someone.
Right up for the tower that's not being used.
I would make a motion to approve this right away easement for Minnesota Electric.
Second.
Then move the second. That we approve the right of way for the news call. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion
We all
I
have,
don't think we all have to sign it.
It was kind of a weird form.
looks like maybe two of us do. Right?
carried. Just got 2 lines.
2 lines. That rolls me up.
Let's see, Clay, I need to know if you can do that, okay, see.
I guess I don't have
It's not chicken.
a choice.
And you're still gonna meet when he's at KC?
What? Oh.
Here.
Meet here?
What day is that?
November
When is that?
5th, 15th, 16th,
16th, I would like, 15th.
15th.
It's the 15th through the
Seventeenth.
Do
17th.
the 16th.
So November
Maybe
16th.
16th.
Do we need to? Or do we have anything pressing?
I don't know.
A little far in the future.
We can,
We can decide later.
okay,
All right, we need both of these.
yeah.
Well, I'm just probably our copy of it.
I was not able to get a hold of the county attorney yesterday.
Imagine
Try
that.
and try. It's the first week he has never called on Tuesday to find out what's going on.
Imagine that.
So,
Right, here's.
I tried.
Tell me what you remember of this conversation, the budget.
You want to go to recess?
During the executive session for that, for this.
I just talked about it, didn't I?
Yeah, we'll recess. Yeah, tailwinds with it.
I did. A little worried about the gas on the way home, but
I did that once. Went to Great Bend, getting 28, you know, that was great. Came back.
It's pretty much straight out of the north, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not across the.
yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. All right. Where do we jump in here? If you want to go ahead and turn the first page here. I just, well, I was thinking about, so last year, you know, when we talked about the renewal last year, there was a significant liability increase. Good news is that liability hasn't really come through to affect you this year. And so right now, it's looking as a good decision at that point. We still obviously have 2.5 months left of this year, but it is looking very, very good, and that's what I want to go through and show you here. So this first snapshot here, this picture was a snapshot in time late last year with your enrollment counts at the top, and also who the carrier, your contracts that you have on your stop loss, which is a 1215. I want to remind you that you have a $30,000 limit on each individual in the plan, where the county pays the first 30. You have what's called a 1215 contract, and that means so from January 1st to December 31st, you can have claims that occur, but then you have that extra 3 months of run out of the end to pay those claims. So if somebody right now had a very large hospital stay and those claims didn't come in until January, you'd be covered on those. So gives you some run out protection. And you also have aggregate coverage, which is that umbrella over the entire group, and that's actually called a run-in. So claims that occurred even last year and this year, but paid this year, run into that aggregate, that umbrella. So that way you have a maximum liability that if you go over it, the reinsurance kicks in on that as well. And so then here, if you're at the very top, you can see what you pay for that $30,000 of coverage is $138. Well, I'm going to step back. You also have one other piece, which is a aggregating specific, which is a one-time deductible on anybody who meets the 30,000. And that's just so if Shane and I both spend $40,000, then you're on the hook for the first 30 on each of us, and then that additional 10 the county pays as well on each of us, and it comes off that $45,000. And the reason why we do that is that they give you a dollar for dollar deduction off your monthly fixed cost, your monthly premiums, like that 138, that 273, 242, and 409. Those numbers right there, they give you a dollar for dollar reduction in those numbers to take on that $45,000. It's just a way to help out. If it does happen, if you do have somebody that goes over, then you have to pay it. If nobody does go over, then you save $45,000. Then you can see that you got an aggregate premium, you got a PPO, you got a utilization review and pre-cert. Then you have your administration fees on here, and then the last one is you see your aggregate factors down below. 722 up to the 2160. That number was what increased significantly last year because you had ran pretty close to hitting that aggregate, that umbrella over the entire group. And when that happens, just so you're aware, why that increases is that there's always a 25%, the reinsurance carrier is always going to put a 25% cushion above your historical claims. And so you ran hot, they put the 25% up, and so then we'll look at this year and see where you're actually at here in just a minute. Then you have some dental factors in there as well to run the dental plan. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit. So any questions on that? That's just kind of the snapshot about 9 months ago. You flip the page, you've got on the back page, I was trying to change our utilization report to make it a little bit more user-friendly and visible, because you can see there's 2 pages actually. These two, this one that's really small, that is that is last year's, and this one right here is this year's. And so I'm going to do a little bit of comparison, but we're going to start on this year's, which is on the other side. You can see that attachment point, if you look in the upper top left-hand box, you can see the same information we just talked about before, what your spec deductible, the aggregating specific, or aggregating deductible was. You can see what your attachment point is. So what you could pay in medical claims for this year would be about that 687 number. Now it's going to vary a little bit just because of how employees, you might be down an employee or up an employee, those kind of things, but it'll be right around that number. That's your cap at the end of the year. Then you have your counts, and then if you go to the bottom box, the long one there, you can see that based off of your counts in the top right, plus the factors that are at the very top of that box, in the top right box, 722, that was on the previous page, you can see that you'd be funding about $56,000 for medical claims into your account each month. And that gives you a year-to-date attachment point of 508. So far in medical claims, in the fourth column over, you've spent $291,000 on medical. You've spent $267 on RX. So it gives you a total paid claims of $559. Well, if you take that and you look up at that minimum attachment with 2.5 months, but yeah, if you're thinking we're getting close. However, of that $559, you have $170,000 that so far is being paid by the reinsurance, because you've had one pretty large claim. You've also spent your aggregating deductible this year so far, so you did spend that $45,000. Then still going over, keeping going, you see then you have a net paid claims of $331. And so you take that $331 and you take that into what you could have spent so far, which is $508, and you're running at 65%, which is, you would be running pretty close to what you were, your attachment point was. You'd still be better than your attachment point, but that it was last year on there. So far from a claims perspective, running very well. In a comparison, the next page down here, you see I've highlighted some pieces, a snapshot in time right now. Your year-to-date attachment point was 378 last year at this time. And if you go back to the other page, it was 508 now. That was that big increase because you about hit that aggregate, that 25% bump. So 378, but last year at this time, you had $591,000 versus of claims versus 559. But you only had $78,000 in the from the reinsurance pocket in the year-to-date spec excess claim, that third highlight. And somebody had highlighted one too many things in the years. When I say third highlight, year-to-date was 78. Then the year-to-date net paid claims was 510 or 513, excuse me, compared to 331. So very, very good. It's a $180,000 difference right now. But you were running 135% last year at this time, which you can see. And then you can see you ended up last year at 115. Thus, the liability increased, but you're not realizing that liability right now. Once a year we talk about it, and I know it's a very complicated process. So hopefully, I mean, if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer that on the medical. I think it's really good news on what your year has done this year so far. Yeah. If you flip the page, this is your dental. Now, you may be putting that all into one bucket. Is that what you all do? So I just wanted to show, we use 12 at the very top of this utilization report. This is dental, 1275 and 2775 for funding for dental claims. And because if you put them all together, medical and dental, this really, you don't see the results. But if you look down here at you can see your year-to-date attachment point based off of your enrollment is 76, almost 7,600, but you spent almost 10.4. So it's upside down about 37% right now. And I don't know that you need to make any adjustments to that from a funding perspective if you're putting your medical and your dental together. That's, yeah. And you can comparison last year, you were at 133, so instead of this year it's 137, so it's up a little bit. Last year you ended up at 140, but we're also talking about small dollars from 10 to, funding 10,000 and spending 13,700. So
not everybody is in that, because you got 30 so.
It's optional. Some take it, some don't.
the only thing, if it is employee paid, is that it's all employee paid, that would be the only reason to possibly look at a family. $27 family plan is, most family plans are 100 and above for dental.
We
now.
charge them 30.
Charge them 30. Okay. So you're probably, well, let me, you know what the single is?
15.
So it's 15 and 30, so you might be pretty close to that. I just had this in my, as my, I think you might have increased that in the last year or
I
two.
think we did, yeah.
I'll run those numbers and just see how that's doing on your funding. That may take care of it right there, what you're doing, and get back to the, where you're breaking even on it. The next page just shows you your large claims. Right now, you have, and we call this our 50% report. So anybody who's hit 15 because you have a 30,000 specific deductible. Some, if you recall, some aren't approved at that 30,000 because of ongoing risks. And we had that last year happen on a few people that are on your plan. And so you can see on here that on number 1, that person is just barely broke over. Not a lot of large ongoing pieces of that, but there will be some smaller things that will continue. The next one was one that, as you can see, was that was a 200 so far, 240,000, probably going to end up being about 270. And so that's a good chunk of money that you've gotten into the reinsurance pocket on. But it doesn't look to be that large of a claim for the future. The next one was one that was not at the 30, but was at 80, and you can see so far that hasn't panned out through 9 months. It's only spent about 40. That one there appears like it's going to be in that 50 to 55, so you're not going to realize that full 80 limit. And then the last one's just a little bit over 50%, and that was just some pregnancy issues that popped up, and it looks like everything's on that. Okay. Now, if you recall, we had 2 others last year that also had increase. Neither one of those have come through this year so far. So that is good, great news. And if you recall, we talked about last year, we call those lasers. When somebody gets lasered, if you recall, the carrier can look at that one of two ways. They can either put it into your fixed costs. Underwriting can put it into your fixed costs, and they can say, okay, that 80,000, we've already got up to 30 in there. Let's put that 50 in your fixed costs. Or they can laser it, and if it's not in your fixed cost, you only pay for it if it happens. If it is in your fixed cost, then you're going to pay for it 12 months for the entire 12 months. And so this has again been a win situation for you after the way last year, the way the quote ended up last year. Any questions on any of that? All right. The next several pages are just a bunch of where your dollars are going throughout the year, things doing. These are paid claims reports, so it doesn't matter when they've occurred, if they occurred last year, or they occurred this year, but if they have been paid this year, they show up on this report. And prescriptions are your largest, obviously, because we talked about earlier that the person who has spent over a couple $100,000, the majority of that has been prescriptions. And we, unfortunately, we're seeing more and more specialty drugs come onto the market. Fortunately or unfortunately, it depends on if you're looking at it. The good news is it is helping individuals. And this individual that have had these, it's not an ongoing prescription that's going to happen, and it looks like it's been successful, what's been going on. So that is good news as well. But it is, I mean, we've got this particular drug we're talking about was $30,000 a pop for 3 months, and then it was each of those 3 months. Then they allow for a second round if the first round doesn't work, so it's $30,000 a pop again. So that was that for 3 months, and so over 6 months there was 30,000 in prescriptions. And if you've been watching the news, I mean, just talking about small things like the EpiPens, which are now they're charging $1,700 for one of those. A lot of people using EpiPens with their diagnosis, and I don't see that changing unless the government gets it and regulates it and the pricing on it. But if you only have one company who's making them, and nobody wants to use the generic if there is one, then it's supply and demand, yeah, supply and demand.
So they
So,
got fined $600 million from the Federal Trade Commission last 2-3 days ago.
yeah, which could ultimately, I see them just paying it and keep doing what they're doing. You know, and take another fine, because that's, when you're a billion, when you got, you're a $10 billion business, okay, we'll pay the $600 million. It's kind of. One thing that I was going to show you, there's a couple pages in, there's a paid claims distribution. I'd just like to kind of look at this and just to show you. It says like 0 to 249. Yeah, one more. Oh,
way
I
back.
think you need
back
that.
one.
Sorry.
Anyway,
This just kind of breaks out to show you, you've had 39 people that are on your plan this year that have spent between $0 and $249, and then you can kind of see that breakout, and then you can see, and this is the typical bell, well, not the typical bell curve, but you've got 6% of your people that have spent 52% of the dollars. Now, what you're missing on here is the one large, because of when those claims were paid. They would, if we run this here report here in a couple of weeks, they would be on that. So you'd have one over 200,000 on there. It says they weren't paid until here in. It's just not showing from a medical standpoint. Or excuse me, from a prescription standpoint.
that's the end of August.
This is actually through the end of September, but it does not include, because that was a prescriptions always lag behind from a reporting standpoint, even though they've been paid, because your pharmacy benefit manager pays those claims, then we get the money from you, then we pay it. That only happens twice a month. Your people still get their prescriptions. We just pay the pharmacy benefit manager twice a month, and so it's not popping up on here just yet, those large ones. I will show you one number. If you turn one more page, it says member relationship analysis. And again, your one large claim's not on here, so this is a little bit skewed right now. But minus that one large claimant, you're running at a $211 per member per month this year. You see there's an average of 98 on your plan and spending 185. Now again, that's without, that number's going to be completely different once that one, being as small as group as you are, that number's
What
going
do you
to
think that number would change to?
It's probably going to be double. I would say it'd be right at 400, a little over. But this gives you a good snapshot of what you, minus that one, what you're doing, and then you put how one can skew it and change it. And anytime you're under 400 is kind of the average that we see. And if you're under that, it's very good. So minus that one, it's very good, but I think it'll be right on that average for this year, once that's added in here. Couple of the next pages, the next one's your top provider. This is where your dollars are going. Pratt's winning a little bit here, and they're actually on there twice right now, and that's just because of a change they did with a tax ID number throughout the year on how they would do their billing. This is Via Christie and Hayes Med. The next page breaks it out on the facility. That takes those. These are your top. These are all of your facilities last year where somebody had something done. Then you have the very next page is your physician. Dollars. And you can see that breaks it out between network and non-network. Anytime that it's above 1 or 2, on there. If you look at the bottom, those are your non-networks. As you see, there's one person on there that had 31, one doctor that had 31 claims. That's a chiropractor. And in Over Hutch, they're just not going to join the network. They're not. I mean, we can try to reach out again, but we've got 6 or 7 groups in Hutchinson, and
In the network.
well, well, it can happen. So, I'm trying to think here when he could. Well, I'll check on that and get back to you. But typically, what happened, it could be that there's 2 different ways that if he's building it through the doctor's office on one, but then if he's also seeing and billing individually, and he's not a member of the network, that could be it on there. But I'll double check on that.
So when he's in Stafford County, he's one, and when he's not.
Does he come over here?
Yeah. he's-
That could be what's happening right now.
Yeah.
That could be.
Been double billing.
I don't think that would be the no, because the system won't allow a date of service, and so it would have to be, even if it was in 2 different locations, same date of service, same bill, wouldn't the system block it? But we'll look at those and see. And maybe, and here's the other thing on that, well, maybe if he is participating over there, but I've seen him on other reports already this year, so maybe he's participating here, but not participating over there. That could be, I'll look at it and see what that is. Lastly, the last several pages here are your prescription claims. Really, the one column to look at is your dollar amount column. If you go down, year-to-date, 284 versus this time last year was 137. And that's obviously has to do with your large claims, which is showing up on here but wasn't on our plan watch reporting, because this comes straight from the PDM. Your prescription benefit manager, sorry to use the acronym. But the good news is you've had 10% less claims this year in the first column. But you've had 106%, 107% increase because of the one drug. And then the last 2 pages there kind of show the same information. But on the very last page, the only thing you can see, that top drug that was on there. And then you have some diabetics with some insulin. You can see on here, let me look at even that insulin, number 2 is bumped up in the last couple of years. It's over $400 a script now. And that was something that several years ago was probably half that or less. So, but as you look through there, if you look at this again at some time and you get some questions on it, please feel free to see.
81% of the total.
Yeah. Yep. Here is, so this is the preliminary numbers right now. So what we can do and what they allowed us to, if you recall, and I think I told Anita this, typically we have to wait on 10 months of claims before they'll give us the quote. This year, for some reason, all of the carriers, and I think they're trying to spread out because everybody's gotten so packed with one new groups. I mean, because people can have different renewals throughout the year where your group is in with 70% of the other groups in the world. So they're starting to release their renewals a little bit early. So that's why we have an early renewal. Now, they still require this month's worth of data to lock in the rates. Now, I don't see the rates that you see on this page changing hardly at all. Okay, so for example, and real quick, I'm going to go back here. Last year, you ended up getting into the reinsurance carrier's pocket for about $150,000. This year, it's looking like it's probably going to be about $200,000, a little bit more than that. You are paying In the current year, you're paying $132,000 in premium to the stop-loss carrier. So back-to-back years, you're going to get into their pockets, okay? So you see on this page, you actually have 3 different quotes, and now you can tell, you've got 4 options at the top, but you have 3 different carriers that are playing right now. So if you look at the first option, this is from your current carrier, and they're saying, we are going to, we'll agree, basically, they're saying $49,000 increase to fixed cost. Now, and I'll tell you right now, that's just because you've had back-to-back years of getting into their pockets. Then you can see the aggregate premium in the second section there is coming down a little bit. Your attachment point is staying pretty flat. That may even come down because as we get through one more month of claims, your averages are looking good, so that liability could come down there. But you see your fixed costs down at the bottom on option 1 would be basically 169 going to about 218, and the maximum cost going up, that's about that exact same amount because it's all in fixed costs. They do give you an option 2, and they say going from a 30 to a 35, they would give you, and really if you look at that, you just take that $37,000 off. So they're giving you $37,000 of credit to go from a 30 to a 35. Okay, so it's $5,000 more risk, but they're giving you 37. So that's over 7 times to do that. And in my mind, anytime it's over 3, it's worth discussing. And this is 7. So, and as long as you've been, so what they're saying is, as long as you've been self-funded, looking at all the historical data and everything, actually they're trying to push you to a $35,000. But you can see with that, that also increases your liability on your attachment point about halfway down, because now you're taking on $5,000 more risk on it on each person on your plan. That goes towards that attachment point. So that goes up. So you can actually see your liability down at the bottom. Your maximum liability is a little bit higher on option 2 than option 1. But again, that fixed cost has come down considerably. And it's about $11,000 more than it was in the current year. Okay? Now, if you look at option 3 and option 4, and you're saying to me, well, why wouldn't we look at those? Because those are more in line with where we're at right now. Even if you look at option 3, you can see that that's almost identical to your specific premium that you have now, a little bit higher on the ag premium. The attachment point's even less than what it is in the current year. And so if you go down to the bottom, you see your fixed costs would only be going up about 6, and your maximum cost would actually be going down 11. Okay. Now the question becomes then, where do they approve and how your ongoing conditions, where do they put those? And so I'm going to go ahead, and this is a preliminary on this. Okay, these are the pieces that you had for last year that you can see what your current is. And I will tell you, it says standard at the top, and the renewal Swiss, they were bought out by Swiss Re during this year, so now they just become Swiss on the renewal at the top. But you can see that currently the first 2 have not come close to being this year, but there is some ongoing risk on those. The third one we talked about was one that is on your report, still not going to have the full 80 on that, and then the fourth one is the new one that you have on there. Swiss has basically come back and said that they in order to do this, they would keep the top 3 where they were. You would have the additional one on there from your current large claimant. But if you look at American Fidelity, which is option 3, you start to see they're good. They're going to be the same on 1 and 3. But in case there was something, they just get stupid numbers on that second person, and they're going to approve the fourth person. Now, again, we've got to send them everything through the end of this year. These may, or through the end of this month, these may change. I think we may even be able to get some of these lowered that were currently there. It's just, this is just, was a preliminary out the gate without doing full-blown medical underwriting yet. And then the last one, you can see there's some silly numbers on that too. I mean, just things that would not be an option at this point. Even though their fixed costs over here are better, once you put the two together, liabilities to me too great to consider them at this point. I will be back in October with final numbers on this to be able to show you, and I think we'll still be able to get this one down a little bit more after this month's over with. I don't think we'll get it back down to current just because they've been hit the last 2 years with a couple $100,000, well, a total of, out of their pocket, minus what you guys put in, about a little over $100,000. But we'll get, I think we can get it down somewhat in your attachment too. So, and then lastly, this is just for you, just to show you the markets that we go to on all of your stop loss. And you can see that in a lot of these, if it says does not meet underwriting guidelines, that's because they will not go under 50 employees. That's typically it on there. Some they just declined and said, you know what, we're not going to be competitive. They look at your history and say, either we're not going to be competitive or we really just don't want to even take a shot at it. But you do have 3, and that's the good news, is we have 2 others that fixed costs have stayed down. We just got to get them to not have these crazy things on the lasers. So I think it's some good news, and I think that ultimately we have some very good options, and I think the liability that was there going into this year, it's been good that we haven't seen that happen. So I think at this point, through that this year, hopefully is a good decision. So if I could, I take this one back and bring you one next time without the names on. I didn't know that was on there.
It's all right. We'll comply to
Yeah.
We'll comply to HIPAA regulations.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Any questions at this point?
Wait till next month.
Yeah.
So we'll send on November 1st. Yeah, November 1st, we'll send out your final months, your 10 months worth of reporting. Then and then you meet every Wednesday, so that will be, we may have some, I'm going to go ahead and see if I can get on the schedule for the 9th, if you guys are meeting on the 9th. And we should have everything at that point that you can look at and be able to have it done early this year, if that's the direction you want to go. So, okay.
Thank you, Mike.
You bet. Anything else?
No.
Okay.
Warmer temperatures.
What's that?
Warmer temperatures.
Warmer temperatures? I think we're on the downhill slide road,
So,
unfortunately. Yeah. Too late.
Thank you.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, nice to see you again, sir.
I'm William.
Right. Perfect.
Hi, Dean Keenan.
Pleasure.
Nice to meet you.
Hi there. Been in the photo.
She's the sound movie.
You're on TV this morning. Well, thanks for having us. I guess this was just kind of an introduction. And and I'll do that. I'll talk about our company a little bit, but and what we've discussed with the hospital and how we will hopefully be able to bring some service to the hospital community. I'd also like to
Definitely it's integral to be able to understand the whole county. The county does support the hospital, and so what does the county think of the hospital? And as we move forward, how can the county be more engaged, or the hospital be more engaged with the entire county? And so I think that's something over time I'd like to make sure that we understand. So a little about our company. So my wife and I are family practice doctors, and we own the company. We started in 2003. We started as an ER staffing company in a small rural hospital. We were able to help that hospital, unknowingly help it turn around. So we kind of looked at what we did there and applied that to another facility that had been bankrupt. Long story short, we have been involved in about 30 hospitals throughout Oklahoma, and we started this year in Kansas as well. But in deep engagement, we've taken care of now. Well, this is the 7th critical access hospital that's having financial difficulties that we've been able to, we're not counting this one yet, but 6 that we've been able to keep from closing. All 6 were on the brink of closure either within days or months of closing. And the last one, the 6th one, was Syracuse, our first hospital in Kansas. They were going to close May 1st. We got involved with them in April. And to this date, none of them have closed. Now, we don't continue to manage all of them. Some of the ones we got in first, the first one we got involved with in Tonga, Oklahoma, was bankrupt and fell into bankruptcy. And we got it turned around and eventually it got it sold off to a larger healthcare system. But now, moving into Kansas, we have longer agreements with facilities, so we like to continue to manage them and not just turn them around. Basically, there's things that are similar amongst all the hospitals that are challenges to rural hospitals, including Safford. Those common things are provider shortages, loss of service lines, so you don't see OB and surgery in these type facilities, higher acuity patients anymore. And so one of the things we look to do is we look to come in and bring a provider base, over time establish a provider base to keep people in the county. We feel that the hospital should be able to provide at least 80% of the healthcare needs. And so we need to be able to provide all of those needs. And people in the county have to feel comfortable with us. So we have to have regular physicians and mid-level providers that they feel comfortable with, see from their children to their other family members, to keep them from going outside the county. And we want to provide good enough care inside the hospital and a breadth of care that they feel that they don't have to go anywhere else. And that's something, it's not a tell me, it's a show me. We have to actually prove to people that we can provide a service, a broad range of service that they feel comfortable with. So that's a challenge that all these hospitals have, that we get involved with. Right now, I think your census at the hospital is very low, both in the ER, in the hospital. It doesn't have a clinic associated with it, but you've got Dr. Farmer and some of the levels that see clinic patients. So we definitely want to work with them and expand from there. And our track record is that we're able to generally bring a good volume of patients into the hospital, both from your county and especially through our skilled program, which we can talk more about, bringing people from outside the county into this hospital. And so we've had good success with that at other facilities, and we anticipate good success here. Other challenges that we find, aside from providers and service lines that are common, is because these are lower volume facilities, they struggle. Rural healthcare offers, studies are out there to show that rural healthcare offers better outcomes with that. Yet people go to larger facilities. The volumes that we have subsequently are low. Even if we're fully utilized by the county, the volumes are too low to sustain ourselves on what's known as a PPS model or a normal hospital that we all have critical access. So that's an expense reimbursement model. And very few companies are interested in that. If you're a medium or larger hospital, there's a lot of companies that know a lot about healthcare that will come in and make sure you're compliant with all the rules, regulations, et cetera. But being a smaller hospital, doesn't have as much revenue. It's really hard to find that level of expertise to come in and manage a hospital. So what we do is we try to help out there. We have a company that we have experts in the field that will share between facilities. So instead of having all the costs burden on just your hospital, we share those amongst other hospitals. So we're able to bring subject matter experts in that you couldn't bring alone into the hospital. Also, the fact that you're now managed helps on cost report, which is a benefit that hospitals that aren't critical access get. So the fact that you're managed means there's some additional expense that you report on cost report, and that helps bring additional revenue into the hospital as well. So in a nutshell, those are things that are common amongst all the hospitals that we're able to help with. Specifically, though, to your facility, we felt very comfortable. We're actually excited to help this hospital because it's unusually well run. It was very clean. It looks very well kept up, which I suspect might have something to do with the fact that your administrator was, formerly the life safety guy there. So, usually if a DON, director of nursing, is the moved into administration, and we come in, we find the nursing department is just top notch. The building may be falling down, but so your building looks great. The staff, when I walk into some hospitals, there's kind of an absentee look in a lot of people's eyes, like we don't know what we're doing, or who are you? It's kind of like walking to a ghost town. Walking into this hospital, I can tell just looking at people's eyes, they're engaged in their work, and so that's good. So you have a good facility. It appears to be well managed, and you're growing. You're putting as far as you're changing with the times. You're putting electronic health record systems in place, etc. But as Mr. Taylor and I discussed the first time we met, one of the big concerns was for a long period of time there hasn't been much cash on hand. And what we see happens, we're usually called in at the very last minute. And so what happens is a hospital like this doesn't have much cash on hand, maybe it's run well, and all of a sudden you get a curveball, and that curveball could be a payback, it's something you have to pay back to the government as a cost report, or your census drops a little bit. If your average census is 1, there's a good chance you may go through periods of time with 0. And so you do that for a few weeks. All of a sudden you don't have any money, and if you can last the next cost report, they'll pay you for that back, but if you have no money in the bank, you can't make it to the next cost report. And so I'll get calls from hospitals that if we could just, if someone will loan them a couple $1 million, they can last the next cost report, but they've exhausted their resources as far as their lending ability, and they can't do that, and so they close like that, just on the spot. It will happen within a couple weeks. And so some of those we're able to help out, and some of them we had to tell them, we are not able to help you out, you're too far down the road. And so luckily we kind of came together and started talking before you guys got the first curveball, which we actually kind of predicted that in our discussions, that would be somewhere around $200,000 to $300,000 in payback to Medicare, and sure enough, when the cost was filed, that's exactly what it was, and you have to pay it back, starting with about $100,000 in the bank. So that's so you're in a very dangerous situation financially. So what we're going to do first thing out the starting gate, we're going to do a cash flow forecast. We're going to look at what it takes to get us through the next 3, 6, 12 months. We're going to make sure we spend appropriately from a cash basis. We're going to work on physician recruiting, both with understanding what the local physicians and providers want and expect, to make sure that they don't get burnt out and leave, and they continue to support the community for a long time, and bringing other people in to help out so that our local providers don't get burnt out, and to provide more variety to the patients in the town. At the same time, we'll be deferring some of our fees for a period of time until the hospital can get those on the cost report and get them paid back, and so that'll help the hospital financially as well. And in a quick, brief nutshell, I could talk about this all the other. That's kind of where we're going to start. The relationship that we have with the board, it's a management relationship. There's a fee associated with that. If this hospital fails, we have no recourse on the county whatsoever. That means our survival, my company's survival depends on the survival of the hospital. And so we're pretty much joined at the hip that way. If we aren't successful with the hospital, then it's not going to be good for our company. We won't get it done back if it closes. So we'll have our commitment for all 3 times.
Was the hospital in Syracuse similar to what you're doing here or not?
There were some similarities. They were far worse off. They had management was a revolving door there. They didn't have a consistent administrator in the hospital. The last 2 administrators had never had hospital experience before they started. They had just shut down their nursing home. They had advertised an $85,000 cash loss per month, which would have shut them down in May 1st. We signed on about a week or 2 before May, and we found out that it wasn't $85,000 loss, it was $155,000 loss. Normally we like to do some good due diligence, but at this hospital it was pretty much get involved now or there won't be a hospital to work with. So it was in a far worse shape. Not only were they projected to close May 1st, but they should have closed earlier because they were losing money at a much more rapid rate than they had thought. So we figured that out. We did a cash flow forecast that required us to make very unpopular cuts in the hospital. We had to do a reduction in force. We had to slow pay vendors, and we had to borrow $150,000 from the county. They also had to do a no-fund warrant that was going to take 3-4 months to kick in, and we did that against the hospital's allocation, so it would raise taxes. And we were conservative with our cash flow forecast, so we were able to beat our financial goals. We were able to start bringing employees, make them whole again about a month sooner than we had predicted. We were able to, we only had to borrow $100,000 from the county, instead of $150,000, and we actually reduced our AP days. After about 45 days into that plan, we were able to start reducing AP days, and we got down lower than we were when we started. So we did a good job with that. It's not out of the woods yet. We did get the no-fund warrants, and now it's a matter of we have, I think it's $800,000 in the bank today. So, and that's not no-fund warrant. We had the county hang on to the no-fund warrants, and we allocated disbursements to go through 2018. So once a month, they're giving disbursements out of that, so that the county hangs on to that, and we just move it over. But we have now with our receipts and our reductions in AP, we are down. We have a lot more cash on hand than we did when we started out. So difference is, number one, management of the facility is not as much of a problem here as it was there. Nobody knew what any of the policy procedures were in any department. That's the playbook that you run the whole hospital by. It was just, it was a mess. So here it's not, it doesn't appear to be a mess unless you're really good at polishing. There's a saying, I'll just stop at polishing. Yeah, but that doesn't appear to be the case from what I can tell. I mean, you can, anyone can kind of walk into a place, and if you've been into enough of them, you know if they got something going right or wrong. If something's really bad, you pretty much know whether off the bat. So.
Have the census needs increased in Syracuse then, or?
Well, they have, but we haven't been aggressive with that yet. So, on average, it's usually between the 6th and 12th month that we focus on census, on average. The reason for that is, part of our planning is these hospitals are better suited for what's called skilled care, and I'll explain that. But they're better suited for skilled care than most major hospitals or even rehab centers. The government reimburses better, and so what skilled care is either physical therapy or a skilled nursing need. If someone has a bone infection, they might need 6 to 8 weeks of antibiotics. That's a skilled nursing need. We get paid well to provide that to the patient. Whereas if you are in a PPS hospital, regular hospital, they might be able to be profitable in the first week of treatment. we'll continue to get reimbursed throughout the whole treatment from the government at our hospital. Same for wound care or debility and other things, stroke. Those are all things that we can take care of and actually get paid through the course of the treatment, as long as we're progressing with the patient. We have an end goal with parameters, but we do much better than other hospitals. In fact, we can help larger hospitals by getting those patients away from them so that they can implement acute treatment, get paid for that acute treatment, and we take them to continue the treatment. So they're very happy to work with hospitals like this. Well, to do that, they also have to feel comfortable with the service we give. So if we're geared, as we currently are at this facility, to take care of a patient or two, we're probably not well geared to take care of 5 or 6 at a time, especially with continuous physical therapy engagement, et cetera. And so what we like to do is make sure that our skilled care program on paper looks good and in practice looks good, and that we're ready for a volume of patients, because we might have 6 to 10 facilities that we talk to have a relationship to get patients from. And so if we have a bad experience one time with that, then that closes the door for the future. So we first go in and make sure cash flow forecast looks good. Then we look on the functionality of the service lines we offer. We get those polished up as good as we can to prepare for volume. And then we start marketing. So in Syracuse, we are actually delayed significantly in our plan because we had to do a reduction in force. We basically had to go into hibernation mode for the first 4 or 5 months of our engagement there. Now we're switching gears to let's start putting this process in place, getting the engagement that we need in the skilled care, and then we'll start marketing it. But we did need patience, so we jumped the gun a little bit and talked to a few facilities. And last month, we're going to report to the board that even though our number of admissions was down at the facility, because we started talking to facilities about skilled care, the days are increased. Skilled care patients stay a lot longer in the hospital. And so that, I think that month we're at $200,000-$300,000 or more for the hospital in the number of patients we saw. So, and basically now we're ahead of last year on days, even though we're behind total days, inpatient and outpatient, because since last month we're beating by about 10-20% last year. So other hospitals in Oklahoma, another one we're managing, we came to them last year. They had an average daily census of 0.4, and now we're averaging about 8. We're going from anywhere from 6 to 12 patients in the facility. They're actually, we could do more, but they don't have enough bed space for the patients. So, and we even brought ventilator patients in that hospital. You know, the sky's the limit. If there's a need, we can get to the point, whether it's IPP, vein treatment, vein feeding, or even the possibility of vent treatment down the road. If that's a need, we could get to the point where we offer that. And in Oklahoma, in this area, where we did it at this one hospital, a lot of hospitals around us, bigger hospitals, didn't have any place to put their older patients with long-term vent needs, and so we're able to take it. Yeah, but comparing you to Syracuse, there's a lot of differences. But yeah, Syracuse would have been, if we hadn't got engaged, it would have been closed in May. And instead, we're sitting with 800,000 in the bank.
And Syracuse has had a long-term struggle out there, and I only know this because my wife's family's from there, and so I just kind of followed it over the years. And you know, they were getting 10 years ago, they were getting over $1 million a year for the county. And still, you know, I mean, they've struggled for years. And I think it's kind of a perfect storm out there as well with their, 8 administrators in 11 years or something like that. I mean,
I think it's more than that, yeah.
more than that.
Yeah.
It's
Half the times you have to change the locks.
It was a main expense, wasn't it?
that's when your staff feels like they don't know what's going on, who's in charge this week, you know, and so luckily we're not to that point. But,
It was real challenging for us because they've seen it, they haven't seen another, well, they've kind of seen a quasi-management company come in, but they've seen so many people run the hospital, and then we're number X, 10 or 12 or 15, and we say things, but that doesn't mean anything to them. What means something to is action, and so the action we took is, okay, well, let's cut your pay and your hours, and so that's not where we wanted to walk into a hospital. We're
professional care.
We're different. We're actually going to harm you, and so I think deep down everyone knew that the hospital was going to close and that needed to happen.
Yeah.
But that it was a very difficult thing for us to maneuver, and luckily I think we did a decent job with that. I think we lost 1 or 2 people that we didn't expect to lose, and everyone else stuck with us, and we were able to get that we had cut their hours from 40 to 32 and an average of 20% pay cut, and we were able to reinstate all but 4 people. And not that we couldn't do those 4, but there were reasons we couldn't reinstate them, but we got them kind of halfway there. And we got everyone their hours back, ahead of schedule, and so that I think meant a lot to them, and I think now they're behind us a lot more than they were initially. But yeah, every hospital's a little different, and you have to be flexible with it. You got $1 million a year that we've been supporting with this hospital. When we got there, they had already taken their entire, I think it was $900,000 of property taxes early in the year. They took all of it and spent it all. They had a $3 million no-fund warrant a couple years before we got there, and they basically spent it on equipment. They had an MRI there. They bought 25 brand new beds with a census of 0.5. Just a lot of kind of silly decision making that was going on with some of the previous administration at the hospital. And so obviously now we're straddled with. I'm excited as a physician to have an MRI at a small hospital, but the maintenance cost isn't.
Yeah.
It's almost we're kind of faced with this. We're losing money on the MRI even though it's already been bought. So a lot of silly decisions. There we are.
Sounds exciting.
Yeah. We're excited. Mike couldn't get to town till 11:30 today, and I didn't think you guys were going to be around till 11:30. Or do you want to? Change the clock
It's a lot
now.
of overtime.
That's not the plan.
So I'll get him out here next week.
Same time? Do you want to get
It's
back
up
with
to
me
you,
with time?
whatever.
Next week's pretty clear, so.
Does Mike usually press the same financials that he presents to the board? Yeah, just you. Yep. We'll make sure. What do you all want to see from the hospital?
Black number.
So you want to have some transparency with the financials, and you want it
And
to
be
be
able to
good.
understand them and know exactly where we're at.
Okay.
I mean, we're not, I can't read them. I mean, you can sit there and look at them all you want, this isn't a real number,
Yes.
That's,
Well, we will continue to do traditional hospital accounting method, but we're also going to do a cash flow forecast. And I think you'll be able to, if you don't have an accounting background, you'll be able to understand the cash flow forecast a lot better. Obviously, that's for operational purposes. It's not for reporting purposes. We report on an accrual basis, and those are really confusing because you show a revenue that's out the roof, and then you have all these adjustments on it from contractual adjustments from insurance companies, and what does it mean if our revenue's out the roof? Well, if all of our patients are non-insured, then we'll probably collect 10% of that, and so that revenue means nothing. So we also like to, especially in the beginning, have a cash flow forecast, because that's saying how much cash are we getting in every month, and how much cash are we paying every month out. So cash in, cash out, and that'll be a pretty easy one to understand and break down. Over time, if we have a good number of days cash on hand, then we may drop the cash flow forecast. But in the meantime, we have to make sure that cash in is at least equal to cash out.
I think that would be very important. Or any other plans or changes that you see that they need to do?
So you're asking me if there's any other? Well, so one thing that's really, okay, so the climate in and compliance with facilities, healthcare facilities is changing very rapidly. Both in Oklahoma and Kansas, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, it was kind of a good old boy system that the surveyors would come through and really work with the hospitals quite a bit and grandfathering things in that weren't consistent with the policies and the federal guidelines, conditions of participation. In Oklahoma, about 3 years ago, that changed. Oklahoma got hit by the federal government because these state agencies are working on behalf of the government to inspect hospitals. So that the government, and I feel in an attempt to maybe even shut down some of the rural facilities, they're now strongly enforcing the codes that are on the books and expecting the states to do the same. So in Oklahoma, they had hospitals that for decades were told, okay, we'll grandfather in on this, or don't worry about that. And then overnight, they come in and say, no, that's not what's in the code book, that it changes, and you have to be compliant with the codes. Which I don't have a problem with. What really was the problem is decades of complacency on both the hospital sides and the state agency side. And then overnight, expecting the hospital to be compliant. Well, of course, if you haven't expected them to be good, that resulted in a lot of hospital closures or departments of hospitals closing. I think over 20 in Oklahoma. Since that happened, basically the government would go in with the inspectors initially until there was a turnover in the state. Well, that just happened over the last year in Kansas. So I haven't experienced this yet in Kansas, but my understanding is the government's now looking at Kansas, and they've started to hold them to the same expectations, and a lot of the inspectors have left, and they've been replaced by others from other states who are adhering to the rules. And so earlier this year, I talked to a hospital in Kansas that had just had their once every 3 years inspection, and there was one guy who had come up from Texas, and he was there about, I think it was 2 or 3 hours, and checked off on everything. And when I was looking at the facility, they were doing surgeries there. By our experience with, if that was over the border in Oklahoma, they would have shut it down. So my concern is getting into the facility, each facility that we manage, and making sure that we address all the really hot button issues that they're looking at right now. I feel, long way to answer your question, my feeling right now is that you have a good facility. Again, from a life safety standpoint, you have an administrator who was the facility guy. And so it appears to me that this hospital has been kept up with fairly well. That being said, we're going to do a mock survey and go through and break it, each one of those issues down. We have got a facility to make sure if something's been put through a wall, that the right sealant is put around it. And you don't have a surgery operation right now, which is probably good for you because they're really targeting surgery. But I don't see a big project that we have to do right off of that. Yeah. Get more patients. Yeah, we'll do the mock survey, make sure. Sometimes stuff comes up, but some of the things they're looking at, for instance, that we may have to deal with. You have to have a negative pressure waiting room in your ER. You have to have and we haven't gotten there yet. You have to have an isolation room that's monitored. Those are some of the things we're looking for outside of the ORs right now. And so we'll make sure we're compliant in those areas. Those are some of the things that we're really targeting right now. Anything related to infection control, right?
Financials, you've seen them, comfortable with them?
Yeah, I saw last month's, it would be August's financials. I haven't seen September's yet. Again, the concern is the amount of cash on hand. If you always have $1 in the bank, then, you're not going to close. But what happens tomorrow? Is it going to be $2 tomorrow that you need? And so that's kind of my red flag alert is we've got to get the cash on hand built up, because you have to be able to pay employees, you have to be able to pay critical vendors, you need your meds, you need your gases, you need your equipment, supplies to be able to take care of patients, especially when you're doing. So we have a plan around all that. But the first part of that plan is revolving around the cash flow forecast and making sure that we say this is how much money we have in the bank, this is the time frame we want to get that much money in the bank. Initially, it's not practical to think revenue generation, because anything we do to generate revenue, it will take time. Even if we admit 20 patients tomorrow, which isn't feasible, it takes time to, after you discharge those patients, you have to see them, then discharge them, and make sure all the, it can take more than a month to get that money. In the meantime, those patients cost us money that we pay in real time. So it's expense reduction is the first part of a hospital in this situation, to get enough cash on hand to be more stable. So we're going to look at all the vendor payments. We'll look at everything to see if there's a way to, without disrupting anything, decrease expenses right now. So that's what we'll do first. And then the next step is revenue generation. I'll look forward to seeing you all again, and we'll keep them regular. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Mr.
Carter.
See you again.
Nice to meet you, sir.
Nice to meet you.
Lisa, did you have anything?
Yeah,
Oh, Jackson.
yeah, I was gonna visit with you a little bit about that. I made a couple phone calls and, yeah, I guess in the capacity of a county counselor. So that answers your question. Right now, we have anywhere from 23 maybe to 28 parcels that are in, I think maybe 5 of them are redeemed, but I just have not got the money from district court yet. So it's got to trickle down through them to me, but I'm pretty sure they paid. I would have to go ask for that. But, you know, in the meantime, the first Tuesday in September is the day of redemptions. So I've got another year of redemptions, and we are almost to the point where there might be more parcels eligible now since September. You know, it's redemption years that you count as eligibility. But I haven't looked at that.
But they're not filed, Joe hasn't filed them and posted them.
No, you want to get this one
Yeah.
done first.
Right.
But
You know where he's at on the notifications in the newspapers? Has he done all that? Or?
yeah, he's ran ads and.
So now it's just time to set a date and get it over with.
I didn't know if there was a time period from when it was published to when.
Yeah, I don't know his time, the time period.
You need to figure that out.
You said 23 to 25 parcels.
23 to 28. I think
28.
5 of them are redeemed from upstairs, but the money just hasn't got to me yet. And that takes, I don't know if she pays them out once a month or whatever. I don't know. Sometimes it takes a few weeks before I get it. So. I know they've been in contact. They got figures for me, how much it would cost, and so I know they've been working on it.
Yeah. I would say we can get a hold of Joe and figure out.
He called him a while ago, and Hopkins again, trying to get him on
I would just see where they're at with that.
the phone. Did you ask him?
Yeah. I hate to do radical man that don't know where we're at.
Okay, I'll call him then.
Very good.
Anything else?
I don't know.
You? We're done? We're adjourned.